tonight with a single recommended network. It's based on so much work, so much feedback. And what we really want to hear tonight is, does this network work for you? A couple of logistics. We're definitely going to be taking questions, but that will be through the Q&A feature, not the chat feature. It's just easier for us to manage the Q&A. So if you have questions, we'll take those at the end, but you can drop them in the Q&A at any point. There was a question already put up about if we're taking public comment, so I want to do a little differentiation for you. We are taking questions. This is a conversation. We are very happy to be having that conversation. That conversation. If you want to make an official public comment that goes into our files, please go to our website or email us. That's reimaginesamtrans.com or reimagine@samtrans.com for the website and the email. That's where you're going to make your actual public comment. This is us talking to you tonight about the network. So we'll also start out. We have translated versions of the PowerPoint. So Amy, if you could go ahead and put those in the chat. We'll put links to the Spanish and simplified Chinese PowerPoints into the chat for you to be able to access with this presentation. And ultimately, you'll be able to find all of this on our website. So again, please put your questions in the Q&A. We'll be addressing those at the end. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jonathan.
Thanks so much, Jessica. And thanks everyone for being here. So this evening, we'll be going over our project goals and timeline, refresher on the project background, and then Michelle Louie from my team, our senior planner, is actually going to walk us through the recommended network. And then I'll round it out with the public input opportunities, and then we'll have that time for questions and discussion. So revisiting our project goals for Reimagine, we wanted to improve the experience for existing SamTrans customers, grow new ridership, as well as have existing riders use more frequently. And we want to build SamTrans into an efficient and effective mobility provider. Looking at our project timeline, we started in the summer of 2019, and now here we are in the fall of 2021. We are now in phase 3 of outreach. Phase 2, we presented alternatives, and I'll do a recap of those alternatives of what the network should look like. And now we're presenting a preferred network for public comment. And from there, we'll take that preferred network to the SamTrans Board of Directors for adoption. And after successful adoption, we'll begin implementing in the summer of 2022. So as project background, as a reminder for us all, in phase 2, there was 3 alternatives that followed themes of what SamTrans could look like. So in alternative 1, it was emphasizing high frequency access to places in the county, really looking at having the bus come more often. In alternative 2, it was about improving connections to rail and other regional transportation. And alternative 3 was really looking at coverage and having the bus go a lot of places. So during phase 2, we did a lot of outreach. Very proud of the amount of outreach that we did. We had virtual meetings such as this one, 4 of them in multilingual languages across the region. We had multiple community pop-up events, whether that be at a farmer's market or at one of our transit hubs. We did 40 presentations to stakeholders, including in city councils, elected officials, and interest groups. We had 5 meetings with advisory groups that we have. And then, of course, we had several meetings with our bus operators, part of the team that operates the routes every day, to get their feedback and thoughts. And we partnered with 4 community organizations, or CBOs, to get the word out and really get that feedback from folks in the county. Along with that outreach of pop-ups, we mailed out 125,000 mailers. And then from that outreach and really getting out there, over 9,000 unique users accessed our website. And out of that 9,000, 2,008 to be precise, gave survey responses to let us know how they felt about the alternatives. We had over 1,300 members of the community participate in outreach events, as pop-up events. And we heard from our bus operators through a survey that we had for the operators to fill out. Looking at what folks said, what they want, from all respondents, connections was the most favored of the alternatives, with high frequency being the second and coverage being the third. From our riders, so these are folks that actually ride the system right now, frequency became the first one, with coverage being in second, almost tied with connections. So what we're hearing is frequency more often, buses coming more often, less waiting, more reliability, improved connections to other routes and services and locations, and expanded hours, more evening and weekend service. And as we go through the preferred network, hopefully you will see that is what it aims to deliver. Also, talking about our guiding principles to the entire Reimagine process. We want to focus on customers and make sure that our decision-making is for the customer, the folks that are using our bus to get around. At the same time, we want to make sure that we create a network that is deliverable at a high caliber from our workforce. We want to make sure that we are planning something that the operators can do and do well. We want to be an effective mobility provider that's not just having a bus out there for the sake of having a bus in the city, but rather it's a vibrant part of somebody's daily commute or a way for them to get from point A to B effectively. And social equity, making sure that we provide transportation services to those that need it the most. So talking a little bit more about equity, what does it mean for Reimagine? It's really prioritizing those service requests from equity areas that we've identified in the county. Prioritizing infrastructure and pilot projects in those same equity areas, and reallocation of service in low ridership areas or unproductive route pieces, and to limit new non-equity service in non-equity priority areas, especially while we're resource constrained. And as part of that too, as we evaluate the system now and moving forward, is to accept a lower ridership or productivity for routes serving those equity areas where we know that that route, may be their only form of transportation. With that, I am going to turn it over to Michelle to go over the recommended network.
Thanks, Jonathan. So let's dive into the recommended network and how we got there. To come up with our recommended network, we looked at a variety of inputs. This included ridership and productivity, equity need analysis, our guiding principles, as Jonathan explained earlier, market research, and market analysis. And this includes things like focus groups, surveys, travel patterns, demographics throughout the county, and also land use changes that are going on. But most importantly, our community, riders, and drivers' feedback and responses were taken into consideration to shape a majority of this network. The recommended network is really designed to achieve 3 goals: equity, efficiency, and connections. Under equity, we want to shift resources to equity priority areas. And these include neighborhoods that are lower income or more transit dependent. And resources could also be shifted from underutilized or duplicative routes that we found in the system. For efficiency, it's all about how do we create more direct and reliable service. Some methods were stop or route consolidation, as well as running some system-wide runtime analysis. And lastly, connections. How do we improve regional connections to Caltrain and BART systems to connect with the larger Bay Area region? And this could include more frequent service to key transfer stations and also timing these transfers with other multimodal services. With all that, here are some of the highlights of our recommended new network. We really took bits and pieces from each alternative and came up with this highlight. Alternative 1, which was all about improving frequency, we have 4 of 7 potential high frequency routes that would run 15-minute frequency all day, and 3 of them would be affecting North County. That would be ECR 120, 130, and the last one, 296, would affect more of the South County. We will also have better peak and midday service on 4 routes, being the 110, the 250, 276, and 275. With the 110 in particular, we recommend better weekend frequency from an hourly service to now a half-hourly service, so every 30 minutes. There would also be a better weekday midday frequency from hourly 60-minute service to potentially every 20 to 30-minute service. For alternative 2, which was promoting more efficient routes, the FCX would be fully restored to meet the demand that we have pre-pandemic. There would be also a new limited stop or express route from East Palo Alto to San Bruno. For community colleges, there would be more direct connections to both Skyline College and College of San Mateo, CSM. And there would be potentially service extended into Oyster Point for Route 130. Under Alternative 3, which emphasizes connections to the larger region, we would have 2 of 4 potential on-demand zones, one being in East Palo Alto and the second one in Half Moon Bay. Also, there would be better weekend or evening services on 5 routes. Routes 121, 130 would be impacting North County, and the other 3 being 270, 276, and 295. And lastly, there would be service extended from East Palo Alto to Stanford. For weekday frequency improvements, the ECR would have 15-minute service all day, every day, 7 days a week. There would also be more frequent service in Daly City, South San Francisco, Redwood City, and East Palo Alto. There would also be later evening service in South San Francisco and better connections to jobs from South San Francisco to the Oyster Point area, SFO, Redwood City, and also East Palo Alto. So as you can see there on the left, we have our existing map. To the right would be what the new network, the recommended network, could look like. And one thing that is new there, those areas highlighted in red, those would be the potential on-demand zones near Half Moon Bay and in East Palo Alto. For weekend service improvements, there could potentially be earlier and later service in South San Francisco, Redwood City, and East Palo Alto. There would also be new weekend service on Woodside Road through our Route 275, Alameda de las Pulgas through our Route 295, and Lindamar via Route 110. Frequency would also be improved in 8 routes, including Route ECR. We would also see some added local bus service, and this includes new service to Oyster Point through an extended Route 130, a connection between East Palo Alto, Redwood City, Redwood Shores, SFO and San Bruno BART through the new EPX, and more direct connections to Skyline College and College of San Mateo. This could be seen through the new Route 124. And lastly, our on-demand zones in East Palo Alto and Half Moon Bay would also have added bus service. However, there would potentially be some reduction in local fixed route service. And this is seen in Daly City, San Bruno area through some route straightening efforts. And what this means is to reduce some of the deviations or the route duplications with other routes, it would serve routes more directly. However, all riders would still be within a quarter mile or a 5-minute walk to the bus stops. In the Belmont, Redwood Shores, Foster City area, we're primarily looking at areas with low ridership and non-equity areas. However, service to schools will remain, so there will still be access for riders to get to schools. In East Palo Alto and Coastside, we're recommending reducing service on low ridership deviations and duplicative routes. Okay, specifically on Route ECR, we have a whole slide dedicated to this. ECR will have improved service on all days, so 15 minutes, 7 days a week. And we will potentially also be looking at a stop consolidation through our ECR bus speed and reliability study. And this will determine which stops may not have as much ridership or usage. And by consolidating stops, that could make the route more direct and quicker. Currently, we are not looking at splitting the route at this time, so it would still go directly from Palo Alto all the way to Daly City in a straight run. There is also no reinstatement of the rapid at this time. And we would also be pursuing reliability improvements through our TSP system or transit signal priority. So potentially making the stoplights go more quick for the bus.
Hey, Michelle.
Yeah.
Explain a little more what TSP or transit signal priority is. I don't think most of the people on the call have heard that term before.
Sure, no problem. So that may be jargon a little bit, but the TSP system are installed at the stoplights. And so if a bus is running behind, for instance.
That's just the interpreter. You can keep
it. Okay, no problem. So if a bus is running behind schedule, for instance, it could be communicating with the light and signal. So it could let the bus through, but not it would turn, okay, I don't know.
It helps keep it green a little longer to help the bus get through there. And it's been actually already testing on El Camino. So it's a technological system that helps the bus just gain a little bit of time as it travels along.
Thank you. The overall outcomes of this recommended network, what this means is it would increase the number of people that are within a quarter mile of high frequency routes. So that would reach 185,000 more residents and allow them to access 125,000 more job sites. And with improved access from equity priority neighborhoods to go to key destinations, key job sites, such as the Stanford area, SFO, Oyster Point. And it also puts them into closer access to transit hubs and schools that may be a transit destination to transfer. Now I'll go on to focus on a summary of specific North County changes with specific routes. First off are all of the service enhancements or benefits of this recommended network. As mentioned, we will increase frequency on Route ECR, so it runs 15 minutes all day, And routes 120 and 130 will also have improved frequency, especially during the weekends, to run up to 15-minute service in periods that it didn't have before. In South City, Route 130 will run later into the evening and also extend a new connection into Oyster Point. The new Route 24 service will run between Skyline College and Daly City BART, so providing that direct transit access that they didn't have before. And there will also be a new limited stop route, EPX, that would connect San Bruno to Redwood City and East Palo Alto through 101. Second, these are the trade-offs that would make the service benefits work. Routes SFO and 398 would be eliminated. In San Bruno, Route 140 would take a more simplified alignment. So as mentioned earlier, some riders would need to walk maybe up to 5 to 7 minutes to access another stop to transfer. And also still in San Bruno, Route 141 would have a reduced frequency so that it would just operate hourly throughout the day. Direct connections to Muni's Route 14 may also require a longer walk of around 6 minutes. And lastly, there would be a couple consolidations of school routes in Pacifica for Terra Nova High. So that would be combining the 16 and the 49. And as well as in South San Francisco for Alta Loma Middle School. That would be a consolidation of routes 37 and 39. So to what extent does this recommended network look into all of the various guiding principles? Well, I'm not going to go into every single option here in depth, but there are 4 key areas that our recommended network considers fully. And the first one is the customer focus. We really heard from a lot of surveys in our first and second round of outreach, and people wanted more midday and weekend service. So we really aim to provide that with some key routes like the 130, the 120, and ECR. Workforce delivery is the second one. We need to figure out how to balance our peak service delivery efforts. So this recommended network work to balance all of those, our own workforce as well. In the next category.
Sorry, Michelle, I actually want to jump in because I think this is one of those things that's really important for people to understand. You know, we use big pressure on peak and with workforce delivery. So, you know, we spend a lot of times, or not me, but Jonathan, Michelle, other people at the time spend a lot of time really trying to figure out where the buses go. And you use a whole lot of service at once during peak. That's the morning and afternoon shift. And then what do we do with the bus drivers all day? So it's just one of those really important points that people need to understand. There's so many different things that go into calculating. And I know, for instance, on the school side, it's just 100% peak service. So that's another additional pressure. So I just want to highlight that as something that we really focus on, and that's really important.
Thanks for clarifying that, Jessica. So our third guiding principle, effective mobility. Although you can see that we are not providing service to new areas with this network, we are leveraging other transportation investments to make connections to other areas of the region, because it's not enough for us to be effective in our own system, but we have to look at the transit network as a whole in the Bay Area. So how do our routes connect to like BART stations, Caltrain stations, and time with those transfers to really make meaningful connections? And lastly is the social equity piece. We really wanted to increase the number of residents in our high equity priority zones to have access to high frequency service, even if this means taking from some other parts of the county that are underutilized. So shifting that to these high priority equity zones really makes more of an impact to those that need mobility the most. All right, so we are still months away from implementing any changes that we're currently recommending. And before that, we still need to get your input before even asking for board approval. So we plan on ensuring that when these service changes are implemented, we'll work on avoiding gaps in service. The phase 1 of implementation will occur next year, August 2022. And this will primarily be for changes that we can implement with our existing resources. So not accounting for any future resources we may get. Phase 2 will happen January 2023 onward for additional bus services and new service types like on-demand zones and express routes, limited stop routes, depending on our workforce. And with that, that concludes the summary of the recommended network for North County. Jonathan will lead the next part on public input.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michelle. That was a lot of material to go through, but you did it fabulously, so appreciate it. Talking about public input and how we can get that feedback to us. So we're collecting public input through November 8th. It's important that we get it by November 8th because we're going to have to take all that public input that you give us, look through it and really analyze it in order to get that preferred recommended network ready for board adoption and consideration. So you can go to www.reimaginesamtrans.com that has a ton of information on it, what we went over this evening, as well as additional information about the entire Reimagine process. You are attending a virtual public meeting, so thank you. You've already gotten involved. We do have pop-up events that are listed on the website that you can go to. And we do have a public hearing scheduled during our SamTrans Board of Directors meeting on November 3rd. Talking about virtual public meetings, we're in the North County meeting now. We will still have the South County meeting on the 21st of October and the Coastside meeting on October 28th. Of course, anyone is welcome to any of these different meetings. We're just focusing on the routes that are within that region.
还有在 coast side， 也就是说海边这个区域呢是10月28号开这个会。
One moment, please.
And with that, we are open for any questions folks may have.
So reminder, we'd love for you to put your questions into the Q&A. That really helps us manage them better. So go right. I'm sure that some of you have some questions. Jonathan, if you would mind stopping the screen share right now. So we have Jonathan and Michelle to answer questions. We also have a couple of other people on the bench who we can call in for more complicated ones, but I'm going to start out with the first question I see. And again, we encourage you to put in your questions. Oops, sorry, I just made my full screen, so I can't see the questions anymore. And we'll be going to 6:30 this evening. All right, so the first question, one of the individual has already submitted a bunch of comments on routing to SFO. So would you be okay in explaining why SFO Airport should only get just one all-day bus service, while the new EPX will only run weekday peak hours? I'd like to see a second all-day bus service to run to SFO, and EPX might not be enough to justify the demand for transit to service to North County. And so then just a reminder to those people who don't have the system memorized the way the rest of us do at this point, the EPX is a new proposed route, which you can read about on the Reimagine SamTrans website that connects East Palo Alto, Redwood City, SFO, and I believe San Bruno Park. So with that, Jonathan, maybe are you the one who's going to talk to us about service to SFO?
Yeah, why not? As I get a frog in my throat right when I'm ready to talk, that's perfect timing. So as far as SFO goes, and looking at our route SFO that's proposed to be reallocated and resources, we're not having a ton of ridership to SFO. And part of that is that there is BART that directly connects to SFO. And for the employees who work there, there is an agreement that gets them a cheaper fare to get to and from work. So our route is maybe not necessary in that area. There's another alternative, but we want to be complementary of our multiple transit networks throughout the system. And then when we're talking about enough buses serving SFO, we also have the Route 292 that will continue to serve SFO, and the EPX, and talking about is that enough service on the EPX? We're starting it off as a pilot with the weekday peak hours only, hoping to build upon that, that it's successful, and eventually launch into more expanded service 7 days a week. So this is where we're starting. We have to always keep in mind our resources and what we have available, but this is not the end of service planning for SamTrans. So we'll continue to expand and work on those different projects.
Man, I did it. I was muted. All right. You think at this point. So can you remind us, when do all the changes take effect?
Yeah, so the changes, once adopted by the board, will start working on implementation starting in August 2022. And that will be really a balance, right? So reallocation of services, keeping resources neutral. And then in January of 2023, we'll work on increasing service. So this recommended network does call for or expands the SamTrans network by 10%. And I'll just speak here briefly about what are the resources that maybe folks on the webinar could help us with, but we are really short on operators. So we're really working hard to have more bus operators join our team. So if anyone would like to be a bus operator or know somebody that does, then please have them go to our website and apply, be an operator. That is my shameless plug, Jessica, because I'd really love some more operators to join me.
And we're going to be pretty upfront about this. We've been pretty open everywhere we go. We have a real problem with operator hiring. It's not just us. It is all transit systems in the country. We have an immense amount of internal work going on to try to hire more operators, but we're committed to putting out service that we can actually perform. So if we don't have the operators, we're not going to put the service out. And that's one of the reasons why you see us implementing in phases, because we need to, those phases really are going to be matched our ability to hire more operators. All right, the next question, for the 120, will there be frequent peak service with all day 15-minute service? Also, what hours are considered peak?
Michelle, you want to take this one?
Yeah, I can take this one.
Cool.
So to answer that second question of peak, it is generally around the same time as the commute hours of the day. So in the morning, that would be around 6 to 9 a.m. And in the evening, about 3 to 7 p.m. And yes, the 120 will operate at least 15 minutes all day until the evenings. And we are planning for some 10-minute frequency service in the afternoon during like the peak times.
And I think another piece on the 120, if I'm not mistaken, is actually an increase in frequency on the weekends in the evening. So right now it's at 45-minute frequency on Saturday and Sunday. It'll be moving to 15 to 30. So that's an increase for those weekend riders.
Right. So can you clarify why the proposed SamTrans bus service from South San Francisco BART to Oyster Point has been removed in the latest iteration of the plan?
Jessica, can you say that one more time? Are we talking about the route?
So can you clarify why the proposed SamTrans bus service from South San Francisco BART station to Oyster Point has been removed from the latest iteration?
Got it. So I think that was one of our proposed routes in the alternatives. I want to say that maybe it was proposed as route 126. I'd have to go back and look. But there was two different routes that was proposed to go from BART and Caltrain to Oyster Point. We still have in there the realignment of the Route 130 that will service BART, South San Francisco Caltrain, and Oyster Point. So that will be available to folks in the proposed network. So still there is the short answer to my answer there.
So this is kind of a follow-up, but on the same theme. I'm disappointed to hear that service from South San Francisco BART to Oyster Point was eliminated from consideration as part of the Reimagine planning process. With all of the development happening on the east side of South San Francisco, traffic going into the east side during peak commute hours will be a nightmare. Would SamTrans be willing to consider offering South San Francisco BART to Oyster Point during peak morning and afternoon times?
So I think, that Route 130, and I would recommend it maybe online at Reimagine explains it better, but that one does have BART access to Oyster Point. And we're proposing to run that every 15 minutes in the peak and midday service and 30 minutes in the evening. So we will have that available. One of the things that I'll mention too that's come up is, with Reimagine, it's a big replanning effort and really focusing on, how the system should look, but it's not where we stop. And so when we talk about development and new things to come to us in the county, we're definitely going to look at that when it comes. This is not a plan that's going to be stuck for years and years. So if something's going to get built in the next 10 years, we better get it into this plan because there won't be service until we do another iteration. We're organic and dynamic, and we make sure that we plan for things to change. But at the same time, we want to make sure that those items are built and there before we start providing service. We don't want to provide service to a construction lot, if you will. We want to really put it where people need it now, and then we can plan once those items become more solidified.
And I would see also we've got a question from South San Francisco City staff, I think reiterating these same points. We are looking at this. We are hearing comments. This is that time where we get that feedback, and we do, want to put out the best service we can, but we also need to balance that with all the constraints we have related to operators around the system. So we are definitely hearing these comments on the 130 proposal, the recommendation, and we'll take that back in and see what resources allow and what we can do. All right, so the next comment, just a general comment. I support 10-minute frequencies during the morning and afternoon peak hours for the 120 to gain more ridership, especially now that Colma and Daly City BART stations currently have parking available, which encourages more folks to drive. Okay, so then, and I also, let's see, what is the best way to give our input? So again, as I started out with this, we consider this a conversation, a community conversation. If you want to make an official comment, please go to our website, reimaginesamtrans.com, or you can email us as well. And also, if you have more questions now, please put them in the Q&A. Sorry, there's a current comment in there that's pretty long. So I'm going to give our team a second to look at that one before I address this newest question. So So the next question is, will you be making changes to the recommendation before they go to the board for approval? Maybe Jonathan, you can talk a little bit about our process after this.
You know what the problem is, Jessica, is that you said there was that longer comment and I was reading it, but I just want to make sure that I heard your question.
You read
the technical what are the
question.
Next steps, right?
I can talk about next steps while you answer that next question. So the next steps are on November 3rd. We're having the official public hearing. This is at our SamTrans board meeting. And the public can give feedback there as well as through the website and other places. And then in February of 2022, that is when the recommended network will go to the board for adoption. And again, we are taking comments very seriously. We are looking at whether some changes to the recommended network need to be made. As I said, that's all being done in the context of operator hiring, timing, and those kinds of resources that we need, and also balancing, what are the priorities. We really are trying to make sure that we're putting substantial service in the areas where people need the bus the most. So that is February of 2022. That is when the board will officially be adopting. And then in August of 2022, that's when we roll out the beginning of the new network. And the more we can do, with the more resources we have, the sooner we will get that service out there. All right, and with that, Jonathan, are you ready for the long question? Or someone?
I am. No, I can do it. I'm ready.
All right. It sounds all right, everyone. It sounds counterintuitive that you're promoting a new system designed to increase equity, and yet you eliminate the 398, which serves much of my neighborhood, northern San Mateo, east of 101, to downtown San Francisco. Even though the ridership is low at times, there are quite a few of us that take it to work and go home. Eliminating this route would force us to take Caltrain, which is a large cost increase and unaffordable to those who have relied on one bus system for many years. I've sent in these comments and more reasons on the website why I find the elimination route inequitable. But it sounds like this has been in planning for a long time. My question is, at this point in time, would my comment even matter in changing the final decision, or is it already set in stone?
Well, first, let me address will my comment matter? Absolutely, it will. We wouldn't be here if we didn't want comments and to understand how people think and feel about the proposal. I will say that we're not going to please everyone, and we're not going to make everything the way folks want it just because they comment. That's the reality of it. However, it's really important to get that. And I would say in this situation, giving us some specifics of exactly what neighborhood or where you're going may help us be able to plan and tweak the system a little bit to work better. But the 398 in general is fairly duplicative of a lot of our routes. Like, for example, the ECR and the 398 run the same corridors for a lot of the route. To get downtown, we have the 292 that runs a similar pattern to the 398. So there are some options other than just Caltrain in order to get downtown. And we're happy to explore those and try to share what we're thinking of the network. But again, it's to get to the idea of counterintuitive with promoting is really looking at where we are duplicative in the system so that we can streamline and have routes, resources move to where we don't have much service or service at all in high equity zones. So the thought process here is that we understand that corridor going from San Mateo County up to San Francisco is really important. But when we look at it, it looks like that's accomplished without the 398 being there, and that resource can be redistributed.
And Jonathan, is there also some access on the FCX downtown?
Yeah, depending on where exactly folks live, and that's where, if you put that comment in of, you don't need to share your address with us, but maybe across street, so that we could give some feedback or think about, if there's high demand in one area, maybe we make a small tweak to a route That's very important. We're not set in stone, but we are trying to balance out priorities and needs of multiple people.
And I think I just really want to reemphasize what Jonathan said about we're not set in stone ever. We'll launch a system. We are constantly reevaluating. Your comments matter. It may not, your comments, we remember them. I remember what people told me 4 years ago in Half Moon Bay. And we carry these ideas forward. So the more we hear from you, the better it is, because we can do these tweaks, we can do these assessments. One other thing I wanted to also throw out there, we're in a period where there's a lot of differences, don't take this away, we need this. And we have a lot of areas in the system with very low ridership, and we want to reallocate those to other service. So the reason I say that is if there's something you see on reimagine.com that you like, tell us that too. That is just as important to our staff and our board of directors to know what people like as what people want to change. Because if you see something on there you like and you want to make sure it stays in the final network, the more voices in support of that we get, the more likely it will. All right. So I think, let's see, do we have any other questions? Another call out to the folks. We have about 6 more minutes before we all turn into pumpkins. Will you be serving the South San Francisco Caltrain station?
So yes, we will have the 292 and the 130 both run near the South San Francisco Caltrain station. And we are working on the station is still being constructed there, and we're working with Caltrain to see if there's a couple, where exactly the buses will pick up and interact with the station. However, we will have those 2 routes by the station where people can utilize our routes in Caltrain at that location.
So, one thing that has been mentioned in this presentation is on demand. We don't have any proposed for North County, but again, the 2 we do have proposed, we consider to be pilots and see how they go. And this may be a good service model for elsewhere in the county. Maybe Jonathan or Michelle, if you want to explain what on demand is.
Yeah. I could start with it and see if I nail it. So on-demand service is a type of public transportation that is not what we call fixed routes. So our routes today, the ECR, the 130, those are fixed routes. They stay on the same path. They hit time points and people come to that time point and get on the bus. On-demand is more responsive to people's travel pattern for the day. So you would call in and reserve a pickup on the system, and then the bus would come in, or by bus, I don't mean 40-foot bus, it could be a cutaway, a smaller vehicle would come and pick you up and take you to or near your end destination. This is a great system to use in places that has a need, but not a lot of centralized need, meaning that there's riders are fairly spread out. And so we'll be piloting that. It's also great in some of our neighborhoods where it's hard to get a 40-foot bus in to be able to provide access and then connect people where they need to go.
Great, so that's something we're just working on. We'll see how it goes. All right, so we have one more question, which 3 minutes left, so this may be our last one, depending on how many words Jonathan uses or Michelle or someone else to answer. Since your upcoming 130 service will be extended to Oyster Point, will you put the terminal at the SF Bay Ferry Terminal for onward connection to the East Bay, particularly for folks traveling to and from Oakland and Alameda?
Yeah, so that's one of the connections that I'm really excited that we would be adding to the system, is that ferry connection. And so, we want to make sure the route serves both workers that are coming from South San Francisco and Daly City, the entire county really, into Oyster Point, but then also folks that are utilizing the ferry. So we will be looking to connect to the ferry there at Oyster Point.
All right, so I think with only 2 minutes left, I don't see any more questions in the Q&A. We really appreciate everyone coming here today. I hope you found it informative. We will be posting all of this information in all the languages on our website. Your comments very much matter. We're taking this all very, very seriously. And we, certainly just to loop back on to Nell at the city, we're certainly looking very hard at the Oyster Point connection and what makes sense for the area. So happy to keep dialoguing about that. So with that, again, please go to reimaginesamtrans.com. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you want to keep. Tell us what impacts you. Tell us what isn't working for you. Tell us everything. We need to hear that through that website. Also, I didn't say this. I assume most of the people here do have internet access. You're joining us at a virtual meeting, but our customer service folks are fully trained. And if someone other than me can put the customer service phone number in the chat, because I can never remember it. Our customer service folks are fully trained to take calls and talk through the changes and can take comments that way. That can also be actually in several hundred languages. So no language barriers calling our customer service line, which, Jonathan, actually, if you just throw up the slide, the number's right at the bottom of the slide.
I'm ready. I did this last time, so I'll say it verbally. It's 1-800-660-4287. That's 1-800-660-4287. And I will add it to the chat right now real quick.
Jonathan practicing his next career as a radio announcer. All right, and with that, Jonathan, is it in the chat? We're gonna, almost there. All right, and with that, we're closing down this meeting. Thank you so much for joining us. We have 2 more of these to go. And we thank you all very much for attending this evening. So we can.
Thank you, everyone. And it's final.